a public hearing with both the members of the Senate and the House. I am the only senator, so I have been selected to chair this committee. Let me let you know how this is going to work. There is a sign-up sheet here. I think a lot of people have already signed up, but if you haven't, please come down and sign up for a slot right now. And while you're doing that, we are going to briefly introduce the committee members, starting down at this end with the only man we have today.
Hi, my name is Tran, and I represent House District 80, which is Dunwoody, Doraville, and Chamblee.
Hi everybody, my name is Ruwa Romman. I represent House District 97 West Gwinnett and includes Berkeley Lake, parts of Duluth, Norcross, and Peachtree Corners.
Good afternoon. I am Representative Inga Willis. I represent House District 55, which stretches from Southwest Atlanta to Buckhead.
Thank you so much for coming, everyone. I'm Lisa Campbell, newly elected to House District 35, which is North Cobb County, Kennesaw-Acworth, and I think worth noting, the seat where the representative served for 17 years, who was the primary author of Georgia's abortion ban bill. First woman to serve in this seat, and excited to be here.
Yes, I do not miss his voice. Hi, I'm Representative Shay Roberts. I represent House District 52, which is parts of Brookhaven, Dunwoody, and Sandy Springs, and I'm so happy to see you all. I am the sponsor for the House Bill 75, and I look forward to talking to you more. Thank you.
And I am Senator Sally Harrell. I represent Senate District 40, which is primarily in North DeKalb. It includes unincorporated DeKalb, Brookhaven, Doraville, Chamblee, Dunwoody, and then goes into western Gwinnett County, where it includes parts of Peachtree Corners and Norcross, and I am the author of Senate Bill 15.
Good afternoon, I'm Esther Panitch. I represent House District 51, which includes parts of Sandy Springs, Roswell, and Johns Creek. Thank you for being here.
Good afternoon. I am Representative Lynn Gladden. I represent District 130, which is actually in Augusta, Georgia. And I am the very first African-American woman veteran to serve in my district.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ann Allen Westbrook, and I represent Georgia House District 163, which is City of Savannah, Town of Vernonburg, City of Garden City, and a little bit of unincorporated Chatham County. So thanks so much for being here today.
Before we get started, I also want to make sure that we recognize and thank Amplify Georgia and all of its folks. They truly authored most of the bill, made a few tweaks, but we could not be doing this without all of you and your organizations that are underneath you, so thank you so much.
Okay, since we have a committee member who is actually the author of the bill, we're going to give Representative Shay Roberts the opportunity to present House Bill 75. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to tell you all today about House Bill 75, also known as the Reproductive Freedom Act. It enshrines fundamental protections for reproductive freedom into Georgia law. It affirms that every individual who becomes pregnant has the right to choose to continue the pregnancy or have an abortion. It prevents individuals from being criminalized for pregnancy loss and protects them from potential aggressive state or local prosecutors. It repeals medically unnecessary and harmful abortion restrictions that create barriers to care. It repeals all abortion bans throughout pregnancy, including the 6-week ban. It repeals biased counseling, forced ultrasounds, and mandatory delays, and it prevents providers from being prosecuted for providing abortion care. It expands access to abortion care for patients in rural areas and everywhere else by expanding the group of trained healthcare professionals who can provide abortion care. For young people, by allowing a provider to have the discretion, if they don't have a parent to help them out, that parental notification, they can decide that it's okay for the child to have an abortion. For people working to make ends meet, by allowing more insurance plans to cover abortion care, ACA plans, state employee plans, and Medicaid. All right, so that is what we are fighting for every Georgian to have an abundance of freedom, because that's what we deserve. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation, Representative Roberts. We have 19 people signed up to speak. We have the committee room for an hour and 15 minutes. So we're going to give each person 3 minutes to speak. Can one of the committee members volunteer to be a timer?
I'll be a timer.
Okay. And so when you hear a particular sound, what kind of sound would that be?
It will come from my phone.
Okay, a sound that comes from Representative Tran's phone. When you hear that sound, that means even if you haven't gotten to anything, you need to wrap up, because if you go over your time, you're going to take time away from someone else. If you are what I consider like an expert, delivering expert testimony, it's like factual information and education to educate us, or information to educate us, then we'll have the opportunity, each committee member, to ask one quick question. And if you can, use a little brevity with your answer to that question, that will keep us on schedule. So first up, we have Allison Coffman.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Yep. Let's try it again. Okay. There you go. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Allison Coffman. I'm the Executive Director of the Amplify Georgia Collaborative. But today I'm here to speak to you as a board member of Access Reproductive Care Southeast. Access Reproductive Care Southeast is a regional reproductive justice organization based in Atlanta that works at the intersection of reproductive justice and abortion access in Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, South Carolina, and Tennessee. As an abortion fund, we provide funding and logistical support to ensure Southerners receive safe and compassionate reproductive health care, including abortion services. In 2022, we provided over $900,000 in funding and practical support to over 4,700 Southerners, around 2,000 of whom were from Georgia. As people struggle to access care, ARC's Healthline has become even more busy. After already increasing our monthly funding at the start of 2023, in February we had to increase our funding again to $130,000 to try to keep up with demand, and even that wasn't enough, and we had to close our helpline at the end of the month. Since HB 481 was allowed to go into effect following the Dobbs decision, ARC has seen a large increase in demand, especially for travel assistance. We have because of these, so travel assistance, child care, support for food costs and other travel, the majority of our callers are now having to travel out of state, which is an additional burden on top of the average $500 cost of an abortion. Just to give a few examples of the kind of support we're providing to help to show what callers and Georgians are experiencing. A recent Georgia caller was at 7 weeks of gestation, which meant they were not eligible for an abortion in our state and had to travel to South Carolina. ARC provided them with $300 to cover the cost of their bus fare, Uber vouchers for rides to and from the clinic, and food costs. Another caller needed to travel to New York for their procedure. Because they were already a parent, they needed airfare for themselves and their child. ARC provided $2,300 to help offset these costs. This caller then experienced additional costs when they needed another surgery procedure following their abortion and had to rebook the return flight, incurring more costs. And although it's rare, ARC does support callers who find themselves needing later abortion care. A caller in August needed to travel to DC for a procedure at 27 weeks of gestation. This procedure was going to originally cost around $12,000, but ultimately cost $14,000 due to delays in accessing care. ARC was able to provide $5,700 and crowdsource additional funding to support this individual. And I want to reiterate who these bans and restrictions hurt the most. At ARC Southeast, we see every day that those most impacted by other disparities are those most impacted by lack of access to abortion care. I'll be brief. 95% of counties in the Southeast do not have abortion providers, meaning rural residents have to travel additional distances to access care. 87% of our callers are uninsured or on Medicaid. 86% of our callers are people of color, and 77% of our callers are already parents. This is why we need a Reproductive Freedom Act. Thank you.
That's overwhelming to hear the effects of this law. Do any committee members have any questions for Ms. Coffman? Okay, we had a new committee member come in. If you'd like to introduce yourself, say where you are.
Good afternoon. My name is Terry Cummings. I'm from District 39, which is Cobb County in Mapleton.
Thank you. And next up is Rachel Neal.
Hello everybody, my name is Dr. Rachel Neal. I am an OBGYN and complex family planning subspecialist here in Atlanta, Georgia. I wanted to come here today to kind of talk through some of what we've been seeing over the last 7 months since HB 481 went into effect, and then in the year before that, before we had the 6-week ban but still had severe restrictions on maternal health care and abortion here in Georgia. I cannot count the number of people that I've had to turn away to send to other states to refer to ARC Southeast to pay for their travel, for their abortion, for their child care. I can't count how many tears have been shed on my shoulders. I can't count how many tears I've cried, right? Thinking about, I don't know how that person is going to make it. I want to also be clear about the fact that some people will argue that because HB 481 has exceptions, we shouldn't be turning away care to those who need it most. But the exceptions are written in legal terms, not medical. It's difficult to interpret them. And oftentimes I find that I'm having to tell people, very real people with lives and families and jobs and hopes and dreams, you are not sick enough. Your pregnancy is not complicated enough. Your baby is not sick enough. And what that means is that in the state of Georgia, in the eyes of the law, you are not enough. And it breaks my heart to see people come to the realization that they have not qualified for the exceptions under the new law, and what that means for the future of perhaps a pregnancy they will carry until it dies inside of them. Or a pregnancy where the water has broken early and I have to tell them, you have to wait to either get sick enough for me to intervene, for your baby to die, or in the case of someone I saw just last week, you go to South Carolina or North Carolina and hope you don't deliver on the way. This is heartbreaking. This goes against medical ethics. It goes against the oath that I took when I became a physician. And it is hard to state how heartbreaking it is to know that I have gone through 10 years of medical training, education, to come to a place where my hands are tied and I am not able to offer the standard of care to people. Like Allison said, the people that are most hurt by this are our most vulnerable populations: youths, Black and brown people, LGBT people, those experiencing poverty. And the right to decide when or if you become pregnant, when or if you become a parent, is a fundamental human right that I am proud to offer to whomever I am able to under the current Georgia law, and I hope to be able to offer to everybody in the future.
So legislators are making it difficult for you to practice medicine.
They are intervening in most ways of how we've changed how we do options counseling when a patient becomes pregnant. It's changed how my patients approach even the concept of pregnancy. I have patients that, they feel forced and rushed into a decision to end or not end a pregnancy because they didn't have enough time under the current law to really assess, their life and their desires, and they don't want to lose the option of ending the pregnancy. And so not only in early pregnancy, but also in the second and third trimester, people are faced with things they never expected to face, and we're not able to offer them the standard of care.
Any other committee members have questions? Yes, Representative.
Thank you for everything you do and for being here. I think you hit on a really good point related to the fact that these kinds of laws aren't just impacting access to, when we say, reproductive care, we're talking about all care, including actually having children. Can you expand a little bit on when you mentioned that for those that go into, their water breaks early or whatever the case may be, can you explain what some of the interventions are that you could be doing that you can't do anymore, and that puts the life of the mother at risk and potentially makes you unable to potentially save that child?
So for context, I think people don't really understand how frequently this happens. The second trimester of pregnancy is defined as 14 weeks to roughly 28 weeks. And it is not uncommon for someone's water to break early in that time period. If your water breaks in the teens, right? So usually before 22 weeks is when most hospitals will intervene. The standard of care is to at least offer an abortion, a termination, be that by dilation and evacuation, which is like a procedure, or induction of labor. Under the current law, we are not able to allow people to choose to end their pregnancy safely far beyond or far before the fetus would be able to survive outside of the uterus. And instead, they have to wait until they have some indication. So some potential complications of PPROM is what it's called, are a uterine infection, which can quickly lead to things like sepsis, death. It can lead to a hysterectomy if we cannot control the source of the infection. It can lead to something called an abruption, which is where the placenta breaks off of the wall of the uterus and can lead to severe hemorrhage and, again, hemorrhagic shock and death. And so we offer people to end the pregnancy to avoid those complications, and now all we can do is wait for one of them to happen.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. Your testimony is really helpful to us, because I think a lot of these legislators that pass this bill don't understand what's going on the ground and how dire this is for some women. Are you aware of anyone keeping track of, I hate to say this, statistics on people who are not surviving because you can't give them care?
There are a couple of different ways that this information is being collected. There are some national, some regional things that are happening. And then we have other data, for example, coming out of Texas after their SB 8 that shows that they had a case study of about 30 people and showing that the severe morbidity and the mortality of these patients compared to a year prior when people were experiencing the same pregnancy complications was markedly higher, right? Up to 30% of people had a severe complication, including death. So there's no database, but yes, there's some things.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Given this just egregious interference by government in terms of your ability to practice medicine, I'm curious to know, in your career, if you've ever witnessed this kind of interference in other areas of medicine.
Abortion care and women's health care is really the only field in which legislators have found it their job to get involved with the complex and nuanced decisions that go on when you're counseling a patient about their health. Anyway, you're right, and gender affirming care.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna let someone else talk. You have another doctor coming.
Okay, so I'm sorry that we have missing committee members here today, particularly the ones that voted yes on this legislation. They're the ones who need to hear this testimony. Next up, we have Suki O.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Suki. My name is Sakari. Most folks call me Suki. I am a resident of Henry County. I've been an ultrasound tech for the past 20 years. I've worked in multiple hospitals, OBGYN offices, and private practice. It wasn't until I started working in an abortion clinic that I truly found my community. I wake up every day loving what I do, knowing I make a difference each and every day. I am grateful and blessed to help folks that come into my ultrasound room. I am a person of faith, and my faith teaches me to love. I pray every day that I can be a light for every person that comes into my office. I hope at the end of my day, someone will be encouraged by the words I speak to them and that they will feel some joy radiating off of me. My work also goes beyond helping folks get abortion care. Women who want to carry their pregnancy to full term are just as important to me. So many folks that look like me are overlooked, undervalued, and made to feel less than because of their race, income, insurance, or lack of insurance. They have just as much right to have a healthy pregnancy or access to quality abortion care as someone who has wonderful health insurance. Since July of last year, we are feeling the effects of HB 481, an almost total abortion ban in Georgia. This law has me turning folks away because of a flicker on a screen that the media and some lawmakers are inappropriately calling a heartbeat. As someone who is trained in anatomy and physiology that you might look for in a developing pregnancy, a heartbeat means you can see 4 chambers of a heart moving, not something so small and unformed that it can be mistaken for an artery in the uterus. But this law treats these as the same thing and places them both above the personhood of the patient who is pregnant. Women are scheduling appointments before they even miss their cycle, in fear of being forced to carry a pregnancy. If they are past this absurd cutoff, they are coming from states with total bans, hopeful to be able to get care and not be turned away. So many have missed work, used all of their resources they have, and driven for hours to get an abortion. This ban doesn't allow folks time to decide if they want to have an abortion or how they're going to get one. This ban is designed to not allow folks to have bodily autonomy over themselves. It is a barrier set up to cause folks to feel helpless. And it is designed to cause more harm to folks that look like me. A good day for me would be today. I had a patient that came in and said, I came to your clinic because I saw the good reviews and I felt safe coming to see you. A good day is telling someone that is holding their breath, literally, until I complete their ultrasound, that they can proceed to have their abortion appointment. I often get a thank you, I appreciate you, or I'm grateful to you from a crying woman. I tell them I am proud of them for thinking of what's best for them and their body. That is how I want the Georgia legislation to care for pregnant women too, with the freedom to decide with what's best for them. Thank you.
Thank you for what you do. Thank you so much for coming. So a question I have is there someone monitoring, somebody monitoring you when you were doing these ultrasounds to know that you really saw a flicker or you didn't see a flicker? Like, is there oversight or auditing of any records or?
The physician has to sign off on my ultrasound showing that there was no cardiac or heartbeat as the bill says.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else with questions from the committee? By the way, I miscounted. We don't have 19 people, we have 12, so that gives us a little bit more flexibility in terms of time. Very good. Thank you so much. Next, we have Beth W. And then after that, on deck, we have Sara Redd.
Hi, everyone. Can everybody hear me okay? My name is Beth, and I'm a resident of Cobb County. Nearly 15 years ago, I had an abortion. I was young, I was broke, I was scared, but most importantly, I did not want to be pregnant. It was not safe for me to be pregnant. I was incredibly fortunate in my experience to have the unwavering support of my family, a family member who was able to help me pay for my care, a safe clinic within driving distance staffed with compassionate providers, and the transportation with which to get there. I am profoundly grateful because I know that this is rarely the case for others seeking abortions. I didn't tell my abortion story for a very long time because I didn't think it was bad enough, harrowing enough, tragic enough to be worthy. And I didn't think that not wanting to be forced to be pregnant was reason enough. Because it's as if we've decided, through laws, unnecessary and deadly restrictions, through false narratives about reproductive health care, that a certain bar must be met in order for a person to be worthy of an abortion. That bar is very high, and it was primarily set by people who will never know what it is to need abortion care. That bar is trauma, that bar is violence, incest, rape, life-threatening medical conditions for which people who can become pregnant are already suffering. It's as though we need to see women and people who can become pregnant suffering profoundly before we decide they may be worthy to seek out standard medical care. When the bar should be, do I want to be pregnant or not? Should be, is my body mine or not? Should be, is my life mine to choose and make and be free in or not? How much suffering will we continue to require women to endure to prove that they are worthy of safe, affordable, equitable health care? Why are trauma and tragedy the prerequisites or the pre-existing conditions we require of people who can become pregnant to access life-saving, life-affirming abortion care? Why in some cases is even that suffering not enough? Truly equitable, accessible care, the kind that the Reproductive Freedom Act seeks to enable, the kind that saves and affirms lives, removes barriers and bars. Georgia needs the RFA because a safe, supportive abortion experience should not be exceptional. It should be available to everyone. And I should not have to justify my abortion with an exemplary life or an exceptional life. No one should. But I will say that I am a published writer whose work has been read in publications around the world. I'm a graduate student and an MFA candidate at a celebrated university. I am married. I have a life that I love. I am safe and happy and whole, and it is because I had access to safe, compassionate, quality reproductive health care. It's because I had an abortion. Thank you.
Story. I know that takes courage, and for all of you out there who plan to share your story today, thank you. I always like to tell people that the first thing you do is you live your story, even if it's not a story you've chosen. The next thing is you share your story, and that takes so much courage, and then you use that story to make change, and that's what you all are doing today, so we thank you. We'd also like to, we have another committee member who has come in. Would you like to introduce yourself and say where you're from?
Sure. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tanya Miller. I am the representative for House District 62. House District 62 is all inside Fulton County. It starts at Grant Park, and it kind of snakes down through all sorts of neighborhoods on the southeast side of Atlanta, Lakewood Heights, Peoplestown, Summerhill, historic South Atlanta, East Point, College. So thank you all for being here.
Okay, we're ready for Sara Redd. And on deck is Zoe Julian.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Sara Redd, and I'm an assistant professor at the Rowan School of Public Health at Emory University. And I am also the director of research translation with the RISE Center, or a long name, Center for Reproductive Health Research in the Southeast. But perhaps more importantly, I'm also a Georgia native. I was born and raised, and I still live in Decatur. I'm here today in my capacity as a researcher, not on behalf of Emory University, to be clear about that, but I am here today in my capacity as a researcher to discuss the thorough scientific evidence base that shows that restricting abortion access causes harm to people and communities. So to start with, research has shown over and over again that abortion bans do three main things. First, they reduce or entirely eliminate access to abortion. They also increase the risk of adverse birth outcomes, so things like preterm birth, low birth weight, or infant and maternal mortality. And they also disproportionately impact those who are experiencing structural oppression, who already face insurmountable barriers at times to accessing healthcare. On Monday, and I actually have a little one-page document that I can give to you all, but on Monday, I and a team of my colleagues from RISE and from the Amplify Georgia Collaborative published a paper in JAMA Network Open, estimating the likely effects of HB 481 on abortion access here in the state. And using data from 2007 to 2017 from the Georgia Department of Public Health, we found that nearly 9 in 10 abortions in Georgia are likely banned under HB 481's requirements. We found 88.4% of abortions are likely banned under HB 481. We found that the ban disproportionately harms Black people, with a higher percentage of abortions to Black patients being likely banned under HB 481 compared to white people. And we also found that there were inequities by age, with people younger than 20 years old being more affected by the ban, and education level. So people with a high school diploma or less were disproportionately affected by the ban. As is no surprise, the Dobbs decision has decimated abortion access in the country. And it's resulted in large swaths of the population either facing enormous barriers to accessing abortion care or simply being unable to access care at all. Data from the Turnaway study, which is a famous study you may have heard of from the Answer group out of the University of California at San Francisco, show that being denied a wanted abortion is associated with poor health outcomes, including increased risk of anxiety and stress, pregnancy complications like preeclampsia and hemorrhaging, an increased risk of experiencing intimate partner violence, and even, as Dr. Neal shared earlier, maternal mortality. Being denied a wanted abortion also increases economic insecurity among people who are forced to give birth, including an increased likelihood that a household's income will fall below the federal poverty limit and increasing debt and lowering credit scores. Being denied a wanted abortion also disrupts an individual's life plan and their ability to plan for the future, so ultimately decreasing the likelihood of graduating with an advanced degree or making aspirational plans for the future. So this is a lot of doom and gloom, but I also want to highlight that there is a lot of research showing the positive impacts of expanding access and protecting access to comprehensive sexual and reproductive health care. Having the ability to access and use person-centered contraceptive services has been shown to reduce pregnancy-related morbidity and mortality, improve infant health, and lead to higher educational attainment and increased economic stability. Additionally, studies have shown that abortion legalization in the 60s and 70s actually led to a 30 to 40% decline in maternal mortality rates in communities of color and significantly improved educational trajectories and earnings among women in the U.S., particularly among Black women. Altogether, the evidence base highlights and emphasizes the critical need for state policy that affirms and protects access to comprehensive reproductive health care and ensures that Georgians have the autonomy and the ability to take care of themselves and their families in exactly the way that they so choose, and to do so with dignity. The Reproductive Freedom Act does this and a lot more, and Georgia really needs it. So thank you all so much. Seriously, thank you for convening this hearing today. I know that it was difficult maybe to get it on the books, but thank you for giving this community the opportunity to discuss the RFA and to dream for a better Georgia. Thank you.
committee members have questions.
Have any questions? Yeah.
Thanks for being here and sharing your expertise.
Sure.
Can you drill down a little bit on this maternal mortality issue? My understanding is that even before we had an abortion ban in Georgia, we had real issues with maternal mortality,
Yes.
with pregnant people accessing the care they needed just to have a healthy pregnancy.
Correct.
Can you kind of talk about what was it like before, how this changes it?
Yes, so, and I heard a lot of echoes, and so I'm sure that there might be some folks who want to talk about this in their testimony as well. But yes, I mean, Georgia has ranked on the bottom end, or top in the worst scores of maternal mortality in the nation for a very long time. Part of that being that we have also not enacted a lot of supportive policies that are helpful for people and not expanding Medicaid. We have half of counties in Georgia that do not have an OBGYN. I mean, these are some seriously, and in addition to primary care shortages as well, we have such complicated and this is such a complex environment to navigate healthcare wise that, I mean, already before HB 481, way too many people in Georgia were dying. People who were pregnant trying to give birth were dying. So this is only going to exacerbate that. There was a study that came out last year that talked about a hypothetical total abortion ban in the U.S. and what that would do to maternal mortality. And their results were that this hypothetical total abortion ban in the U.S. would lead to a 21% increase in pregnancy-related deaths, and that increase was disproportionately higher among non-Hispanic Black individuals. So based on what we know from that study, I mean, I think the MMRC is going to be releasing some more up-to-date data in the next few weeks, hopefully. But I mean, we already know that this is only going to exacerbate those problems.
So to elaborate on your expertise, in those areas where we all have makeups, where there are demographics that are plagued with areas that have medical deserts.
Sure.
Where we don't necessarily have medical professionals that are in the area performing medical procedures where we can actually extract that data. So we are looking long-term, potentially, at numbers that we won't know these effects for maybe 5-10 years.
Right.
Because we just actually don't really have the calculation, and we won't know until these people or these families would have either become adults or that is significant.
Yeah. Yes, and that is one of the reasons why just that lag, that delay in kind of like establishing data collection and getting whatever the bureaucratic, the channels that it has to move through in order to get that data. Yeah, that's absolutely a huge limitation of, not being able to know exactly what's happening on the ground in real time.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much for coming today. Next we have Zoe, Julian, and on deck we have Leo, Seyij, Allen. Thank you for the phonetics pronunciation help. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm a little tall. Is it okay if I hold the mic? Okay. Everyone can hear me? Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you to Representative Roberts, Senator Harrell, the committee members, for inviting the public to speak in favor of the Reproductive Freedom Act. My name is Dr. Zoe Julian. I use they, them pronouns, and I am a board-certified obstetrician gynecologist. And similar to Dr. Redd, my testimony does not represent the views of All Star Health System, but I do come to you as the medical director of abortion services at Feminist Women's Health Center in Atlanta, Georgia. Thank you. For over 40 years, Feminist has been a leading reproductive rights, health, and justice organization in the Southeast and remains the only Black-led, explicitly feminist, nonprofit provider of direct reproductive health services, including abortion care, in Georgia. Last year, we provided compassionate abortion care to over 3,000 people 80% of whom are people of color, a third who were immigrants or refugees, 15% who'd identified as lesbian, bisexual, asexual, or queer, and over 2/3 required donated funds to pay for their abortion care. It is in service of them and all Georgians that I testify with unwavering support for the Reproductive Freedom Act. As a doctor, I have a front row seat to the abysmal reproductive health outcomes that plague our state. My patients are navigating worsened criminalization of abortion care, rising pregnancy-related morbidity and mortality rates, obstetric and midwifery provider shortages, relentless attacks on queer and trans communities, and continued racialized violence at the hands of militarized police. The 6-week abortion ban forces my patients to make nuanced healthcare decisions urgently before most people even know that they are pregnant. And without resources, others are forced to continue pregnancies against their will, like the mother of 2 in excruciating pain with sickle cell disease, and upon learning she was 8 weeks pregnant, begged me for abortion care that I wasn't legally permitted to provide. This ban forces me to go against my medical training and my professional ethics, denying people the safe, high-quality medical care that they need. Restrictions particularly punish lower-income folks and victimized youth, like the mandatory 24-hour waiting period, the wholly medically inaccurate Women's Right to Know Act, parental notification laws for youth seeking abortion, and a 22-week limit for patients with pregnancies resulting from rape or incest. These policies do not reflect evidence-based medical practice, and they make pregnancy more unsafe for all Georgians. But the Reproductive Freedom Act would remove these bans, expand insurance coverage for abortion, protect Georgians from being prosecuted for pregnancy outcomes, eliminate delays, repeal harmful hurdles that are completely medically unjustified, and make it easier for young people to access abortion. With this legislation, I can do what I was trained to do, to provide excellent care to whomever needs it. We have a fighting chance to both expand abortion access and improve the health and well-being of all Georgians. The Reproductive Freedom Act is an urgent, critical step to not only ensure abortion access for all Georgians who seek it, but it is foundational to making a collective liberatory future a reality for our state. So I urge all members of the Georgia Legislature to support this essential policy and bring our state closer to reproductive freedom. Thank you again.
Committee members? Yes.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you for your work and your expertise and your passion for women's health. I am a lawyer by trade, and I would not dare try to practice medicine. How does the sort of legal implication of making a decision about when abortion care would be appropriate legally, how are you managing that, or how will doctors manage that as a practical matter when you're dealing with a patient, perhaps an emergent situation? What is the infrastructure for you guys to sort of figure out legally whether you're in jeopardy or not when you're trying to figure out how to save someone's life?
Yeah, thank you for that question, and I echo Dr. Neal's response to a similar one earlier. This is completely uncharted territory for many of us in the practice of reproductive health care, or healthcare in general. The infrastructure can sometimes involve talking to your colleagues, calling the legal representatives at your hospital or health system, the ethics committee, senior leadership. But the truth of the matter is that no one has yet in Georgia been prosecuted for pursuing care under one of these medical exceptions, or under one of these legal exceptions, excuse me, they're not medical. And so we are in a no man's land. Providers are scared. They are practicing in ways that are not consistent with the standard of care in attempts to protect themselves legally, as well as protect patients from prosecution. And the moral injury that is caused to providers as a result of this law are immeasurable, in addition to the way that it endangers the care of our patients and our communities. Dr. Neal gave a great example of and I want to explain it again because it can be hard for people to understand, a medical entity called PPROM, or when the bag of water breaks far before a pregnancy is viable outside of a person's body. And the complications that can come from this condition include severe infection causing sepsis and potentially death, as well as significant morbidity even if one is to survive. The risk of severe hemorrhage resulting in a hysterectomy to save someone's life, and just so many other potential complications. And so it is standard of care based on all of our professional organizations to offer someone an abortion and termination for the pregnancy to prevent these complications. And right now, I'm not able to feel safe in offering what I know is the standard of care because of the potential for the legal consequence and the criminalization of providers and patients.
That's a very real example. Okay. Anybody else? All right, we're all depressed.
Don't be depressed, there's the RFA.
That's true.
Yeah. Thank you.
So what we have to do is pass the RFA, right? Elections matter, don't they? Yes. Okay, next up is Leo, Seyij, Alan, and then we're going to work back in Natea C.
Good afternoon. Okay, here we go again. I'm a Baptist pastor, so I need y'all to talk back to me. It may hurt you, but I promise it won't hurt too bad. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Amen. There is still some joy I have in my heart amidst all of the bad legislation that has happened in the last few years. I have hope, prophetic hope in the Reproductive Freedom Act, in those of you who are here and those who weren't able to be here, and prophetic hope that God is still able to change hearts and minds, and that a no today may be a yes tomorrow. Doom to you who legislate evil. Doom to you who make laws that make victims. Laws that make misery for the poor, that rob my destitute people of their dignity, exploiting defenseless widows, taking advantage of homeless children. What will you have to say on Judgment Day when it arrives out of the blue? Who will come to your rescue? What good will your money do you then? Those are not my words. I wish I could take credit, but that is the great prophet Isaiah. And I come to you today as a Baptist minister. I work as a Georgian campaigns manager for Faith and Public Life Action Fund. I'm grateful to have my CEO here, Janae Lewis from DC. We represent thousands of clergy and faith leaders across the country who believe that our human rights are sacred and that our legislators have the power and ability to advocate on behalf of the majority of people of faith. There is a small minority that is the loudest voice in the room and has been the loudest voice in the halls of power for a very long time. But I'm here today, and if I can just go to church for a moment, I'm here today with some good news. I do hold many intersecting identities, legislators. I am Black, proudly, unapologetically Black and queer. I'm a Southerner, and these aren't just to define who I am, but each of these defines and shapes who I am as a faith leader. I am a ordained Baptist pastor, raised in the Black Baptist Church, and that church has a history of activism and advocacy in the struggle for civil and human rights. Do not let anybody tell you otherwise. I understand as a minister that matters of justice and equity are central to faith, and that reproductive justice is matters of faith. And my faith tells me that God cares about human rights and the dignity of all people, and the decisions that we make for our bodies are our own. In Matthew 27, chapter 22, Jesus said to love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus was, if nothing else, an advocate for the health and the flourishing and the justice of God's people. This is not just important to me, but it matters to God. The right to have or not have children, to raise the children we do have in safe, healthy, and sustainable communities, and to make decisions about our bodies are given by God. A legislator cannot take them away. Reproductive justice is personal for me. I was directly impacted and shaken not only by the overturning of Roe v. Wade, but House Bill 481, And now we have an opportunity to do something different with House Bill 75 and Senate Bill 15, the Reproductive Freedom Act. As an out transgender pastor, I rely on reproductive health care every day for my well-being, for my survival, and for the opportunity to thrive. But I know that access does not just matter for someone like me. It matters for those in my congregation, those faith leaders in their synagogues and mosques who listen as pastoral and spiritual leaders to stories of people who have already been impacted by this abortion ban in Georgia. We know as people of faith that each and every human being deserves access to health care because we are full human beings. We are worthy of dignity and respect and care. This is just some of my story, but I want to say again, the majority of people of faith, the majority of people of faith stand against the criminalization of abortion, stand in favor for access to reproductive health care, including white evangelicals. But there's that minority that's created a divisive conversation that's making it harder for people of faith to communicate our beliefs about faith. And so I am here, not just on behalf of Faith in Public Life Action, but on behalf of the Black Baptist Church, on behalf of my grandmother, God rest her soul, on behalf of rabbis and imams and Sikhs and Christians all over Georgia to say that we stand for reproductive justice. And it's not in spite of our faith. Oh no, it's because of it. Thank you.
Into something that some of us have had some discussions about. You know, there's always some people who draft religious freedom legislation. We've actually bounced the idea among some of us of having a religious freedom act that protects people of faith who believe that access to abortion is a civil and human right. Would you support such legislation?
Oh, absolutely. And I want to be clear that there is there's this really unfortunate game of rhetoric and creating culture wars that do not exist, right? And so religious conservatives who sometimes, and I'm going to call it for what it is, align themselves with white nationalism, racism, and all the other isms, because this is intersectional framework we're talking about, tend to try to co-opt and hijack religious freedom. True religious freedom means the ability of people of faith and no faith to make decisions that are best for them, because we believe that that is a divine right. And so absolutely, we have a large contingent of clergy who were very carefully watching, I don't want to say 481, but the RFRA bill that came back up and raised its ugly head yet once again, who were ready to testify and to speak out and say, no, I don't care who you believe in, what you call God, if God or no God, we are not going to take away your right to bodily autonomy, because that is us attempting to play God, and woe to us if we do that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for coming today. Lutea, and then on deck is Gabriel Sanchez.
Good afternoon. Lord Jesus, how can I go behind that? Just pack up and say amen and go home. My name is Natea Chambers, and about 20 years ago, I lived a life of school, partying, and working, and I was a single mom. I had a child at a young age, and I was involved in a relationship, and me and the guy, we was just dating. It was nothing serious, and I got pregnant, and so I chose to have an abortion. I chose to have that because of the lifestyle that I was living. I know that I was a single parent, low income. I didn't have much money. I didn't have many resources. So at the time, my thinking, why would I bring another baby in here? You know, I was already partying and everything else, so why was I going to bring another child in here? So I chose to have an abortion. And choices are the things that we act on based on our circumstances. And at the time, that was my circumstance. And what I wish was different is that the quality of care available to me as someone with little money, no income at the time, was not what I would have wanted, but is a choice that I had to do. It was a difficult experience for me because of the place where I went, and I'm not going to go into that, but I was happy with my decision. There are many women that have been in my situation, and there are others that who have been sexually assaulted, raped, or molested, or anything like that. So they will have to, and they may choose to have an abortion because of the traumatic experience that they have, experienced. I feel a person's situation will determine the choices that they make in life, because I can only imagine if I was one of the victim of rape or something like that, and to have to be forced to have a baby and relive and react, and that could be traumatic. So I just feel that that's why I'm passionate about this being this act, because I just feel as a woman we should just have a choice, and nobody should tell us, hey, you shouldn't do this with your body and you shouldn't do this with your body. Recently, a college student I'm very close to found out she was pregnant, but because of the Georgia laws, when she found out she was pregnant, she was required to wait 24 hours. Then she passed the 6-week mark, so she didn't have a choice. So she did not have time to gather her thoughts. She didn't have a second chance. Only thing now she knows that she's going to be a mother, because she no longer had a choice. So it was like a sense of urgency for her, because she's a college student, and when she found out she was pregnant, she was like, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant. And when she thought about choices and the things that she could do, it's like when she found out, it's like, okay, you're this far along, you can't do this because of this law said this, and if you do this, you have to go in another state, and the money, and it's just a lot. But in conclusion, I believe you can never know what someone else's situation is. To me, freedom of choice is a necessary freedom, just like our freedom of speech. You cannot know what someone else is going through when they are facing a pregnancy, and these laws are based on the feelings or assumptions of people who pretty much will never be in our shoes, in our situation. I wish all legislators would understand people's need to be able to make such personal decisions for ourselves and give our freedom of choice as a basic liberty.
She no longer had a choice.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
We next have Gabriel, and on deck is Nicole.
Hello, everybody. I'm Gabriel Sanchez. I'm with the Atlanta DSA. I'm not a healthcare professional or someone who is, technically like someone's going to go through this, but I do want to talk about the movement as a whole to restore rights for women and for those who can carry pregnancies, because I think we need to talk about how we're going to fight back. I think this is an incredible thing to organize, this committee hearing. I'm really glad, thankful to Amplify and all the legislators here who have not only introduced this bill, but also have organized this, because the fact that under the Gold Dome we can't even have a hearing on this is a disgrace, to be perfectly honest, and that they don't even want to have a discussion. And we know why they don't want to have a discussion, because they know they're not in the majority. They know they're not in the popular position, so they don't want to talk about it. So that's a lot of different things to do. But one thing I want to focus on is obviously putting in the people who are going to protect healthcare in positions of power. Because, you know, abortion rights are healthcare. Abortion is healthcare. Healthcare is a human right. And we need to protect that. We need to elect pro-choice candidates in the state legislature, but also all the way up and down the ballot. A lot of people don't know that you can elect judges in Georgia, right? And those elections are in May, not in November. We need to be more cognizant of those things because the other side is definitely cognizant of it. And that's how they got to this point in the first place, because they paid attention to positions that we weren't paying attention to, or not enough of us were paying attention to at least. So that's why I think we need to make sure that we're paying attention to these elections and making sure we're looking at pro-choice candidates. And I do want to note that I say pro-choice candidates because there are, unfortunately, although they're very rare, there are some Democrats who are pro-life, including one current State House member who did vote for HB 481 in 2019. And there's also the district attorneys. Most Democratic district attorneys in Georgia did say they were going to not criminalize abortion in their counties, except for one, the Democratic DA in Cobb County. So we do have to make sure we pay attention not just to party affiliation, but also to what exactly they believe in, and make sure that we're holding them accountable to that. So with that, I think, you know, we need to organize around these issues in a way that makes sure that we are paying attention to every part of the ballot and making people civically engaged. And I think, you know, as terrible as overturning Roe v. Wade is, I think how many people are in this room and how many people came out to protest last year and how many things we've been able to pass since then, like the abortion fund in Atlanta, decriminalizing it in DeKalb County. I think that's a good first step of showing that people are ready to fight back, and we just have to continue building that momentum until we get it. Thank you so much.
Okay, we have 15 minutes left and 3 speakers, so we'll need to keep to the time limits. Next up is Nicole. Thank you.
Hi, I'll be quick. My name is Dr. Nicole Patterson. I have a PhD in biochemistry, but I'm actually just here as a private citizen because I'm one of those not good stories, one of those very bad stories, and if I had been living in Georgia as a teenager, I don't think I would be a doctor today. And so because of that, I thought it was really important for me to come and tell my story. When I was 18 and in high school, I was sexually assaulted by a man 10 years older than me, and I became pregnant. There was no proof of the assault. It was his word against mine. So it was very much one of those legal gray areas that maybe I could have gotten abortion health care or maybe not, but it would have put my healthcare provider at risk. I didn't discover I was pregnant until around 6 weeks. The people who put this together clearly don't know that most menstrual cycles are usually about 4 weeks apart. So I was only 2 weeks late, which does actually happen pretty frequently for many women, especially teenagers who have maybe only had their periods for a couple of years. Because of Planned Parenthood, I had a safe abortion at 10 weeks and was able to move on with my life. Not only was I not emotionally or financially prepared to be a mother at that time, but I would have been intertwined with a man who had assaulted me for at least the next 18 years. Like, imagine that. Instead, I was able to go to school, study biochemistry, obtain a PhD, and become a scientist. It's great. Because I was able to use safe family planning, I had the ability to become financially independent, which is also really a good thing. A man's decision to remove my agency was not able to destroy my life. I am here for the girls who are currently in this situation. I know what that's like. I know how scary that is, and I want them to be like me. I want them to go through that situation and to be able to come out of it better. or at least, maybe not better, at least unscathed, stronger, right? I want them to be protected. Without access to abortion care, I would likely have dropped out of high school, which is crazy to me because I've had like 20 years of education on top of high school. And my situation would have been very different. Additionally, as I contemplate having a child as an older woman, I'm 39, I paused due to this higher likelihood of situations that these doctors were just telling us about, where, you know, you may have, you're more likely at my age to have an unsafe or unviable pregnancy, right? And so I would be potentially at a higher risk of having a very, you know, life-threatening situation where I would have to, you know, go out of state in order to fix my situation. But I know a lot of women are not in my situation where they can go and actually take the time off or have the money to actually do this. So I think the situation here in Georgia really needs to be fixed. I support the Reproductive Freedom Act. Okay, that was pretty much it, sorry. Yeah, and I just think it's a personal decision between a pregnant person and their healthcare provider. And thank you for all the healthcare providers that gave their...
I just wanted to say thank you for your story.
Sure.
You were part of, I had that story, I got pregnant at 37, and the pregnancy was not viable, and I did have the choice to make the best decision for my husband and I and our small children at the time, and it breaks my heart that my daughters won't be able to make that same choice and that you're struggling right now to make that decision because you may not have that choice.
I will probably adopt, so it's all right. But
still, we shouldn't be in this position. So
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for telling your story.
Thanks.
I appreciate it.
Okay, we have Nate, and then on deck is Janice, who's our final speaker.
Hey everybody, my name is Nate and I'm a resident of Fulton County, also here as a private citizen. Today's International Women's Day, so I wanted to highlight how the 6-week ban is designed to obstruct working class and poor women from accessing the health care that they need. The 6-week deadline is not based on any kind of science or higher morality or anything. It's an arbitrary deadline that was set to make it as difficult as possible for working class women to access health care when they need it. No matter what the laws are, rich and wealthy people will always have access to abortion because they have the money to go to another state. These abortion bans, like the one we have in Georgia, are not about life. They're about control over working class and poor people's lives. Right now, there's only 15 clinics that provide abortions in Georgia, and 95% of counties in Georgia do not have a single abortion clinic, which means the majority of Georgians would have to travel significant distances to reach any abortion provider. This is a huge financial barrier for those seeking abortion care, and not just because of transportation, because we know that 60% of people who have an abortion are already parents to one or more child. For a working class woman in Georgia, someone might figure out they're pregnant just 1 or 2 weeks before the deadline. So if they want an abortion, they have to take off work, they have to get childcare, they have to travel potentially hundreds of miles, maybe to another state. This may not be an obstacle to millionaires, but this is insurmountable for many ordinary working class people. Opponents of abortion rights will often use contorted logic to claim they oppose abortion to somehow defend unborn children. But abortion bans are not motivated by any sympathy for the millions of working class children in Georgia or anywhere else. Because if the legislature actually cared about children, they would fully fund public education instead of chipping away at children's programs and services. They'd make school meals free, and they wouldn't saddle young people with insurmountable amounts of student debt. If they were pro-life, they wouldn't be poisoning our environment. Wow. There are so many different issues where we can see clear as day that the moment a child is born, suddenly all that pro-child or pro-life sentiment just evaporates. because it is not about life. It's about control over working class women in Georgia. And it's about making working Georgians as precarious as possible by taking away options for family planning. In a country and state that claims to be all about liberty and freedom, all people deserve to live safe and healthy lives with control and autonomy over their own bodies, with no qualifications or exceptions. If someone needs a medical procedure like abortion, they should get it regardless of their income or their insurance plan or what county they live in. That's why Georgia needs to pass the Reproductive Freedom Act. Thank you for your time.
And finally, we have, is Janice, is that right?
Yes. Hi, I'm Janice Lemieux, and thank you so much, Representative Roberts and Senator Harrell, and all of the committee members who are here. I really appreciate you. I'm here today as an older person who started college in 1972, before Roe was decided. I know what it's like and how scary it is to drive a friend from South Carolina to Washington, D.C. to get an abortion, and then the infection and danger that followed that even then. 10 years later, as a young married woman, I suffered a ruptured ectopic pregnancy and almost died. Today, women will die because physicians are afraid to deal with it. I'm here primarily as a person of faith. My grandfather was a Southern Baptist preacher. I was raised in the Lutheran tradition and most recently have belonged to a UCC congregation and am considered the revered crone of a coven. My faith informs my life and requires that I seek justice for all. Providing a just world in which women have full autonomy under the law requires that women have adequate reproductive health care as well as the authority to make private, personal choices regarding their reproductive health. As a person of faith, I believe that at creation, life began when God breathed spirit into humanity. I believe in eternity, that our souls are eternal, and that doesn't begin at a fixed point and move only forward. Our souls have eternally been one with God and are simply temporarily embodied in human form. To me, the psalm that tells us that God knew us before we were knit in the womb clearly indicates that God held us in spiritual union. We were one with God before we indwelled human form. Because of that, I'm comfortable that no choice made by a woman to either bear a child or abort a fetus can separate that soul from God. We live in a state in which 75 counties have no practicing OBGYN and in which 63 counties have no pediatrician. Georgia has a terrible maternal mortality rate. Even a desired pregnancy can present dangerous health threats to women, and I know. Restrictive abortion laws further endanger women's lives. I know you and your colleagues will hear from religious groups that believe differently than I do. Through the decades, this issue has now been cast as one of morality. To me, a moral life means making choices after discernment, consideration of possible future outcomes, and with as little harm as possible. To enact laws that force women to carry unwanted pregnancies denies them the ability to make private, personal decisions based on their own faith and understanding of God. Abortion prohibition denies women the dignity of full human rights. Criminalizing women and their doctors, especially in a state in which women's care is already deficient and often dangerous, cannot be the desire of a compassionate, loving God who created us in their divine feminine image.
Thank you so much. We're wrapping things up just in time. We have about 5 minutes left, so I'll make some closing remarks. Representative Roberts will make some closing remarks, and we'll be finished. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming down here, for sharing all this information, stories, and inspiration. I'm sorry that our other committee members that I mentioned before who voted yes on House Bill 481 are not here. They too need to hear this. But for those of us who supported the Reproductive Freedom Act, what you have given us today is inspiration to keep working toward this vision. I particularly liked the presentation about what we can do going forward. We need to be smarter. We need to be just as smart. We need to be smarter than the other side. Again, just thank you for coming out here today.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. And yes, I am sorry that we lost our room in the Capitol, but actually I think this turned out great because we didn't have to worry about interference. And it's safe, and very safe, we can't get in. Under this gold dome, sometimes it's hard to have hope as we sit and we fight these awful bills, and I think Senator Harrell has had some that are worse so far, but they're coming our direction, I'm sure. Sorry. Yeah, I know. And so it's hard to find hope sometimes. It's hard not to get down into the looking out at all of you, hearing your stories, hearing how hard you all are fighting for the same things we are. It gives me hope. The other thing that gives me hope is, other than Senator Harrell and I, all of these representatives right here are freshmen. And when I tell you, we have 25 new Democrats in the State House. This is the smartest, most professional, most well-educated, amazing warriors I've ever met. I'm so honored to serve with all of them. And when I look at them, I have hope that we're going to find a way to get a real hearing. We're going to find a way to get this done. We need your help, but I promise you, we're all ready to continue fighting. So thank you for being here today. Yes, ma'am.
I was going to ask what can we do to get the folks who aren't here to listen? What should we be doing? How should we get in contact with them? What's the most effective way?
So I would
next steps.
Email, call, especially Sharon Cooper is the chair of the committee that would be assigned to. But I would hit the speaker, I would hit Chuck Frustration, the key leadership people, send them a clip. We're gonna push out this video on our social. Please, you all do the same. And we just need to stay in their face. I will tell you, we've been doing that on common sense gun bills this session. And we'll see, we heard, I don't know if it's really, we'll see if it happens, but Chairman Collins allegedly gave Dr. Al a handshake agreement to have a hearing. And when I tell you we are in their face, I was walking down the center aisle and I looked confused, and he said, "Is there something I can help you with?" And I looked up and I said, "There sure is." And he said, "What's that?" I said, "You can give one of our gun bills a hearing." And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry I asked." And I said, "What about that beautiful daughter of yours? Don't you worry about her?" And he said, "Well, soon enough she'll have her own gun." And I said, "Not at school, she won't." And it isn't a solution. But I just want to tell you that to let you understand what we are dealing with. And the same thing goes for this particular issue as well. So thank you again. You guys give me hope.
I was going to say, in the Senate, our rope line is open. I don't think it's still open in the House, right?
Yeah, we are open.
You are open. Okay, so the way you can really talk to someone is to page them out at the rope line. They are not always going to come out because if they might not be on the floor, they might be working on something. Or they hide, yeah. But if you can get them out, you can actually, talk to them face to face and tell your story. And in the Senate, I would say Senator Strickland, Brian Strickland, Senate Bill 15 is assigned to his committee, it's Judiciary, and he is one of the more moderate Republicans. Also, I believe Senator Tillery, who chairs appropriations, I believe his wife is a OBGYN. Yeah. So she understands maternal mortality.
I'll tell a small story.
Yeah.
I'm from coastal Georgia, and after Dobbs came down, in several Facebook groups, there were spreadsheets circulating of doctors who would do tubal ligations because women are afraid. Women are afraid of getting pregnant and not being able to access care. And there was a complete list of OBGYNs from South Georgia on that list, and I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, another one you might want to talk to in the Senate who's a more moderate Republican is Senator Kay Kirkpatrick, who is also an MD. She's a hand surgeon, not an OBGYN, but she would be fairly open-minded too. And we need these people who are the moderate Republicans to put pressure on their caucus to fight that.
Good evening. Thank all of you for being here. And I am a member of this freshman class, which is the most diverse class in House history. Which I think is imperative for this fight. We are from all spheres and lenses of life. We are Palestinian, we are Jewish, we are Episcopalian, we are all the things. We are Muslim, but I think that's important in this fight because there's such a push to normalize an interconnectedness of pain and suffering with worthiness of freedom. And that is manifested through religious dogma, but also through legislation that is systemically oppressive. This fight, amongst others, is one of the reasons that we are here, and one of the reasons that we ran, and one of the reasons that we continue to be a vessel and a voice for the community. Many of us were where you are last year, and now we're speaking at the podium last year, and now we're sitting up here having made the transition into legislator. But I say that to say, when I get that piece of paper, and many of us did this week during many of the votes, saying someone's outside that wants to speak with you, and then it says what they want to speak with you about and where they're standing, it gives you a feeling because you already know, like, oh, I don't even really like this bill, but I'm going to go out here and have this conversation, because if I don't, I haven't given this person an opportunity to speak with me, and we're in an era now where that is harmful because people are going to respond to your lack of response. So I'm encouraging you to take that approach, and in addition, we get flooded with emails. I know it sounds cliche, but phone calls are extremely effective. When we walk in our offices, postcards when we walk in our offices, and the admin is like, you got 3 calls from constituents. They want you to vote this way on this way on this, and this one is mad about this. If you don't sit down and return those phone calls, those are the people that voted you in office, not the people we sit with every day. So I just thank you for encouraging us. And my takeaway from tonight is to continue to fight, because morality and salvation should never be tied to choice and freedom. And that is the fear with which some of our other colleagues are leading, and just wanted you to know we're aware of it, and you can count on us to continue fighting for it. And I thank my colleagues that have been doing the work, and we're just here to help them lift it.
I echo that as well. Thank you both for bringing these bills forward. We are so honored to support and continue this work. I would just offer up and play on all of this. Thank you all for coming, and have courage. Have courage. And in addition to contacting your legislators up and down the ballot, it's also equally important to continue having this conversation at your home, with your parents, with your kids, with your neighbors, at your churches. And a special message to, I think, a special place that white women have in this room, who have historically been a barrier to all other equal rights. Let us go home and talk in those places where it is the most difficult to talk, with respect and courage and nuance. Because when we come together, all of us come together, we can and we will have our equal rights. We will. And I just say, keep it going, have that courage to have all of those conversations, because the majority of the people in this state want all the things that we do. We just need to come together.
Really want to tell you things.
I just want to say one more thing. In terms of what can you do, make sure, just like all of my colleagues just indicated, this time last year we were all sitting where you were. Make sure that you keep the conversation engaged. When you leave here, don't stop having those conversations in those spaces. When he indicated about what elections occur in May, what elections occur in November, don't stop. Keep the momentum pushing. Because when you lay down, when you stop the full press, when you pull off the gas, then the conversation stops. You have to keep that engagement. I speak from a place as a veteran, as a soldier. You keep that, you just keep your foot on the gas. You just keep going, you just stay engaged. You stay engaged. That's the best way for me to say that.
And I would add, when you talk to the rope lines, which I think is the best piece of advice, come in a group, I wouldn't confront anybody in a group. I would go one by one, have them go in and called out, and go in and called out, so they can see you. But they're people too, so don't, get hostile immediately, even though, you want to. Right, well, at all, yes. Don't get hostile at all. There are lots of officers there, so don't do that. But it's too easily to dismiss people who are defensive. So try to engage in conversation and keep that conversation going. Tell them you're going to follow up with them, and then follow up with them. And keep it going. You want to engage in a relationship with your lawmaker, which is good generally, but especially good on a topic that you really care about.
Anybody else want to say anything? And thank you to our one good man.